Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've only got one more day left until Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is definitely going to be coming, and I'm still basically excited for it, and I'm sure that Paper Mario fans will be also excited for it as well. So, either way, hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic Rush for the Nintendo DS, while we're still able to experiencing Blaze's story. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to completely done with the forms of Zone 5, which appears to be Altitude's Limit, and meanwhile, we also did manage to able to went into Zone 6, which appears to be Huge Crisis. So, overall, we actually did those two zones pretty good, except the fact that I do die occasionally during the forms within Altitude's Limit. Well, that's just mainly because that level is super duper difficult. So because of that though, and as far as Huge Crisis, as far as I'm concerned, that basically though, I have no issues with that particular level, similar to the forms of how it does it on Sonic's story, except the fact that thankfully though, I didn't die too many times in Huge Crisis as Blaze, so that's besides the point. And finally, most notably, we did somehow manage to able to claim not only the 5th Soul Emerald, but also with the 6th Soul Emerald. So this means we've only got one more Soul Emerald left, and so we basically collected every single Soul Emeralds as Blaze. So because of that though, again, the actual story progression for Blaze is self-explanatory, because obviously though, unlike in Sonic's story, you have to go through special stages in order to able to collect those Chaos Emeralds, so either way. So, even then though, as a matter of fact though, it's about the fact that, well, today for this video is about the fact that if you couldn't tell already, we've decided able to go back into Deadline for the second and the final time for this particular playthrough. So because of that though, hopefully we should able to get ourselves the 7th and the final Soul Emerald. So as a result, that this level will be also a piece of cake, except the fact that during the forms within the final section in Act 2, because obviously that was about the fact that we still have to rely on the forms of those very finicky rockets. So because of that though, yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 22nd of May today, in some cases in 2024 today, and I have no idea why I just died right there. I'm guessing it's because I accidentally just boost straight onto those specific Eggman's robots, and for some reason they now have shields on them. So because of that though, I didn't pay attention to that at all. Well, mind you about the fact it's been about 2 days ago since we've last played this game for sure, and relatively speaking I was about the fact, oh my lord, that was a true definition of the close call right there, because I could assure you, if I fell down there, as you saw from about a few seconds ago, that will actually get a bottomless pit, or much like the forms of how it does in Altitude's Limit, that's there's also this instant death laser. So because of that though, we still need to watch out for a lot of hazards in this stage. So because of that though, oh, and something's worth noting for, I love this particular version of What You Need, and this time what appears to be Blaze mixed version. So because of that though, it sounds a little bit more atmospheric for the sake of the forms of how the stages actually fits into that particular stuff. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that I honestly do prefer Blaze mixed version of What You Need compared to the forms of how it does on the Sonic's version. So because of that though, maybe I'm biased I guess when it comes to soundtrack in mind. Well, relatively speaking, that's as far as I can try to able to explain about that. So anyway, and as far as you probably already know, is about the fact that, like I said before, tomorrow is going to be the celebration of the release of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake, and I was originally trying to able to actually explain about the forms of what the review scores is going to be like, for the sake of the forms of this amazing remake, but straight to the point, I think it's probably best if we either let Tiana will mention about it, or Mighty and Ray will both mention about that if they go on to the final stretch in terms of the forms of Super Mario Advance. So relatively speaking though, because I'm pretty sure about the fact that exponentially speaking though, we can pretty much guarantee we can able to actually not only finish up this game right here, Sonic Rush, but also with the forms of Super Mario Advance during exactly the same week. So because of that though, it's actually quite amusing actually about the fact that I found out to be about the fact that we always attempt able to do like Well, it's hard for me to explain, but I know for a fact that for one noticeable thing in mind, that it's actually pretty cool to be able to actually play through a Mario game and a Sonic game during the forms of this month so far. Even though technically speaking, I was about the fact that there's also a Princess Peach game somewhere, but either way though, as a matter of fact though, it's about the fact that Tiana, she's almost onto the halfway point in terms of the forms of the hide and seek challenges so far. So either way though, yeah, that's as far as I can say about it. So, and as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that you guys even remember during the forms of it yesterday that Tiana did somehow briefly mention about the forms of yes indeed, it's been 5 years ago since Mario Kart Tour beta test version did somehow exist, and mind you about the fact that there's a lot of differences I also found out as well, that basically is about the fact that she did somehow mention briefly about the forms of the actual specific currencies for the sake of the forms of the beta tour version. Like for instance, on the final version, the actual currency was actually rupees because of color coordination, and as far as I'm aware, is that on the beta test version is actually the emerald. So because of that though, because apparently though that Tiana did somehow almost forgot to know about the forms of what the specific in-game currency is called, but as it turns out, I did somehow found out it was actually emeralds, which, kind of thinking about it though, while looking back on it though, it's basically like a green version before the events of the final versions rupees. Mind you about the fact they'll function pretty similar, so because of that though, and also for I've noticed about this as well, that during the forms of been a beta version of Mario Kart Tour in mind, that basically though, when it comes to the forms of the countdown, basically though, the actual sound effect was actually reused based off of the likes of it, not only Mario Kart Wii, but also with Mario Kart 7 as well. So, and I believe that could be also applies for Mario Kart DS as well. Well, straight to the point though is about the fact that it's been quite some days since I actually have last played Mario Kart DS, since whenever I managed able to look back on it though, as a matter of fact though, is about the fact that until next year, that Mario Kart DS is about to became 20 years old until next year. So because of that though, man, time flies. Alongside with the forms of this game right here, as we still currently playing through right now, which is of course Sonic Rush. So because of that though, and it's also one of the things worth noting for, this is going to be the final platforming level we can able to do in this game, because as a matter of fact, it's about the fact that the last stretch of the game is going to be all around boss battles. So because of that though, now to be expected about the fact that we might able to actually fight against with Sonic in Journey forms of in Deadline boss. So because of that though, similar to the forms of how it does it in Sonic story basically. So either way though, except the fact that we are going to be fighting against with a different character. So either way though, and there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that whenever I also looked upon something for the sake of the actual comparison between the final version of Mario Kart Tour compared to the forms of how it does it on the beta test version, is that the item box ticket is actually in a different color, depending on what specific version of the game you're playing. Back in the day that is, ranging from the closed beta version compared to the forms in the final version of the game. I believe in the final version is basically all green, whilst compared to the test beta version was all blue. So I guess that's a little bit more cooler as far as I'm usually concerned of. Well, that's besides the point. So anyways, and it's also worth noting for this is going to be the final time we can able to actually deal with certain rooms that you have to fight against a bunch of enemies before you progress. So, and as a result, we are basically done with the majority of the forms of certain enemy rooms we can able to encounter with. So either way though, yeah, there's nothing else we can really say about the forms of this particular point at this point, guys. I mean, apart from the fact that I can't even believe we are getting very, very, very close until this legendary RPG game is definitely coming back, and as a result, I'm still basically excited to able to actually, well, get the game at long last. Although despite the forms of some controversial opinions out there, like as a result with the forms of this 30 frames per second situation, and on top of all that stuff though, there's also with the forms of censorship, and on top of all that stuff though, just anything else in general, which I could probably think about on top of my head, but either way. Also, I just realized we have not seen the electric shield for quite some time, so basically though, it functions pretty similar to the forms of how it does it in, let's just say the electric shield from Sonic Events 1 and 2, and I think there's also ones on Sonic Events 3 or something. and something tells me, once again, I messed up at the very end, but that's just mainly because I couldn't exactly pay attention. So because of that though, at least hopefully we can able to actually succeed with the forms of this particular very finicky rocket section, because thankfully though with the actual hover ability for Blaze, there should be not much of an issue. So because of that though, and suffice to say, so far, I did somehow die twice during the forms of this entire zone so far, which I was not expecting that, but regardless of everything else though, it's because, obviously, like I said before, it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. But hopefully though, we can able to finish this game up at some point in this coming Friday, specifically on the 24th of May, so either way though, I suppose we'll have to wait and see what happens. So either way, so of course we meet again with Dr. Eggman, and he's got the final Soul Emerald, so we must able to get the Soul Emerald back before he decides to use it. And yes, every once in a while, Sonic or myself decides to able to join in the phrase, and despite the fact that we're not going to be faced off against with Dr. Eggman until the final zone. So because of that though, similar to the forms of how it does it on Sonic's story basically, except the fact you hear, or you might able to see, different dialogue in between the forms of the actual conversations between Blaze, Sonic, and Dr. Eggman. So yeah, you get the idea for this point. So, but anyway, and there's also another thing it's worth noting for actually, is about the fact that the good news about the forms of the Nintendo company out there is about the fact that Nintendo is still saving the physical games department. So because of that though, it did somehow mention about the fact that we will continue selling physical games for the foreseeable future, which I suppose to me though, that's generally a good thing in my opinion, because I'm always a big fan when it comes to able to be collecting certain physical games from time to time, because I always love seeing the actual cover arts and the back of the actual description at the back, and on top of all that stuff though, with the inside image on certain cases for specifically the majority of the first party Nintendo games basically though, because you know, one of those examples in particular, which is of course Super Mario Odyssey, where if you open up the game case, basically though is about the fact that it actually shows you the actual lyrics of Jump Up Superstar theme song, thanks to the forms of Pauline, and it's been sung by Kate Higgins. That she's also voiced Tails ever since in not only in Sonic Free Riders, but also with Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, and I believe all the way up to Sonic Lost World, I'm pretty sure, because as far as I'm aware, that was before when Tails' voice is changed again until 2014. And I will say though is about the fact that I still really enjoy Tails' current voice ever since in Sonic Boom and all the way up to Knuckles the series up to this point, and maybe we can hopefully able to actually hear his amazing voice again at some point for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 the movie. So because of that though, yeah, I'm still basically excited for that as well. So anyway, and it's also worth noting for is about the fact that apparently though, that Inside Out 2 is going to be promoting with the forms of the McDonald's Happy Meal. So because of that though, yeah, I've got nothing else to say about it, apart from the fact that, well, it's going to be yet another McDonald's promotion to go alongside with the actual film's release or something. So either way, I will say it's about the fact that the character battle against Sonic is actually a lot tougher than the forms of how it does it for Blaze though, because mind you about the fact that, as you can tell, that Sonic is going to be activating the Whirlwind. So because of that though, we have to avoid the actual Whirlwind Tornado attack at all costs, so just in case you don't want to get hit too many times. So either way though, yeah, nothing else I can really add around here. So either way though, oh come on, he's almost down. Oh goodness. And sometimes he just likes to able to actually counter-attack sometimes. But oh jeez, come on. Oh, this is not good. Okay. Come on! Come on! Alright, there we go. We're now on to the last phase. So you know what that means? It's time to do some more button mashing. So because of that though, now I believe this is going to be the final time we're going to be doing some button mashing. Thank goodness for that. Because, let me tell you, I think my arms are starting to get a little bit achy. Every once in a while, whenever I decide to do button mashing, especially concerning for the fact that it could be related to a Mario Party minigame and stuff like that. So, And also, as far as I'm aware, actually, I'll get into more details about that until whenever we get to the final zone, actually, which appears to be unknown, but this time with Blaze. So, as a result, no matter what, though, I'm just gonna have to able to concentrate on this particular final bits of the fight, and hopefully we should be able to discuss upon more stuff here and there. So either way though, anyways, let's go ahead and get my fingers ready to do some ridiculous button mashing again. So hopefully it won't be that bad, but either way though, let's just go ahead and keep on doing, you know, simultaneous A and B buttons together. So I'm still surprised about the fact that the X and Y buttons was not utilized with the button mashing sequence. I mean, sure, it's quite intense, kind of think about it though, but still. Come on, you should be down. Alright, there we go. Oh, my goodness. But anyway, we can now able to receive the 7th and the final Soul Emerald for Blaze. So, and this is going to be the final time we're going to be seeing that specific cutscene, because once you manage able to fight against certain bosses again, basically though it just shows us the forms of pretty much an identical cutscene as you found for the sake of the forms of when you're trying to deal with certain bosses as Sonic, except the fact that obviously though Blaze just managed able to did the different posing or something. So either way, so yeah, that's all I can really say about it. So either way, it's a shame about the fact that I didn't get that much ring bonus, but that's just mainly because I didn't seem able to look after rings all that much, unlike the forms of how it does it in Sonic's story, that basically though we did somehow luckily achieved the glorious S rank on that particular battle, whilst unlike in Blaze's story though, basically though, I felt it was a little bit tricky to get an S rank from, unless again, if you managed able to try to set the game on easy mode, then by all means you can able to do that. So because of that though, yeah, as to be expected about the fact that similar to the forms of how it does it on Sonic's story, that obviously though is about the fact that, well, obviously we'll see that particular conversation about the forms of both Sonic and Blaze have been met. So either way though, that's all I can really say about it. So anyway, in terms of the forms of, oh, and speaking of something related to Mario Party, if I can recall correctly, that I found out about the fact that there's gonna be a code name called Pancute, or anything else like that. So, I think, kind of thinking about it though, it's actually gonna be developed by not only ND Cube, but also Smile Boom. And can you tell what that particular developers are actually familiar to you? Well, for those of you probably wondering, those two developers, both ND Cube and Smile Boom, they both developed not only Super Mario Party, but also with Mario Party Superstars. So maybe it's a possibility that we might able to actually see the true final Mario Party game to be released on the Nintendo Switch before they moved on to a Switch successor. Well, then again, time will tell though, especially considering for the fact that, yes indeed, that we'll definitely get ourselves the Nintendo Direct at some point in June, and I think it's going to be the final Nintendo Direct focusing on the forms of the regular Nintendo Switch before we move on to Switch successor, basically. So because of that though, yeah, I'm still basically optimistic to know about the forms of the final batch of announcements they'll able to bring for the sake of the forms of the regular Nintendo Switch before we move on to Switch successor. Because of that though, everyone else keeps on talking about the forms of The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, as well as Twilight Princess HDs, because as far as I'm aware, both all these players are pretty much desperate to able to know if those two games are definitely coming to the Nintendo Switch or something. Well, then again though, it's probably hard to tell at this point, because obviously we're still in May after all, and no matter what though, I'm pretty sure we've only got about, I would say, 9 days to go, or technically 10 days left actually, just before June is about to be started. So because of that though, because we're on Wednesday of course, so either way, and it looks like something tells me it's about the fact that Cream has been kidnapped. So because of that though, we have to stop Eggman once and for all, but this time around though, taking place in the final zone, which is of course unknown. So because of that though, I get the strong sense of feeling about the similar vibes for the likes of Sonic Advance 2 almost, except the fact that obviously though is about the fact that in Sonic Advance 2, that I believe one of those random robots, or specifically one of those strange Eggman's creations, did somehow kidnap Vanilla, whilst this time around though in Sonic Rush, that Cream the Rabbit has been kidnapped. So it's up to Blaze to save Cream. So either way though, and unlike in Sonic's story though, that basically though is about the fact that usually Cream does not show up on the main menu, including the actual boss fight itself as well, because like I said before, she's been captured. So because of that though, or kidnapped I should say. But anyways, it's time to do the unknown level once again, except this time with Blaze. And thankfully, this boss is nowhere near as hard compared to the forms of how it does it in Sonic's story. Although it still is pretty tough though, enduring the forms of certain attacks. So anyway, and I should want to point things out is that yes indeed, this boss is actually called the Egg King. So yeah, I just want to classify that. So either way though, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, in regards to the forms of what has been happening also, is that I've noticed is that the Switch is mainline Pokemon's most successful platform in terms of the forms of the highest sales recently. Because as far as I'm aware, that basically does about the fact that, if you probably already know what I mean, that basically does about the fact that when it comes to the main Pokemon games, it's actually doing really well for the Nintendo Switch itself. So because of that though, yeah, I'll talk more about that if we get onto the credit sequence in Blaze the Cat. So generally speaking, I was about the fact that we still need to able to hang on to his arm, so just in case you don't able to actually get thrown back into the forms of the arena. So relatively speaking, that's all I can really say about it. So, and of course we still need to try to able to avoid those very irritating lasers, but sometimes though you have to be so dead on with the timing aspect. So because of that though, including with the forms of some instant death attacks, like usually relatively speaking though, oh, okay, so we did somehow survive for that particular attack. So yeah, if you do manage to survive at one point in a battle, basically though it just takes you straight into this particular bit right there. So yeah, something's worth noting for, I suppose. So either way though, and like I said before, I found this particular boss battle as Blaze is actually not too bad, I don't think. Unlike in Sonic's story though, it just feels a bit extremely difficult. Again, it's probably because of the forms of the actual difficulty select you're going to be selecting, so yeah, that's besides the point. So, and usually like I said before, it's about the fact that this game does indeed have multiplayer. And basically though, what happens was though, it plays pretty similar to the forms of how it does it in, let's just say in Sonic Advance, as well as Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Advance 3. That basically though is about the fact that you once again going to be able to compete against each other in a race. However though, it's about the fact that this is on the Nintendo DS after all. This means about the fact that in order able to actually play multiplayer, is that I need to able to require a wireless play for the sake of the DS download play, and exponentially you can able to actually take control of two characters, which is of course Sonic and Blaze. So basically though, one player can able to play as either Sonic or Blaze, and depending on what character you select, you're able to actually hear a different soundtrack variant for certain stages and what have you, which I think is actually pretty swell, especially concerning for the fact that, and I'm pretty sure that it does have some items to able to hinder the player, so that's as far as I can think about it. So of course you won't be able to experience the boss battles in multiplayer, so I just want to classify that. So either way, oh, looks like we're not doing too shabby this time around, so I guess that's generally a good thing, despite it's pretty tricky to dodge certain things still. But regardless of such though, I think we actually attempted, oh god, I totally forgot about these little rolling little stuff that comes out of the forms of his mouth. But either way, we're now on to the final hit, so as usual, we're just able to keep on jumping right onto its glass dome, and that way, that pretty much takes care of the forms of the Egg King, and of course, unknown as far as the stage itself is concerned. So because of that though, and yeah, straight to the point is about the fact that nothing else I can really say about this, I guess, apart from the fact that I will mention about the forms of the actual specific sales numbers for the sake of the majority of the Pokemon main games, compared to the forms of how it does it on the previous systems, ranging from Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, and of course Nintendo 3DS. So either way, so yeah, that pretty much does it for Blaze's story. So yeah, we're about to enjoy the ending to Blaze the Cat's story, and hopefully we should be able to save Cream for reals. So either way, I was so close to getting S rank, but oh well. And of course, much like in Sonic's story, we're able to actually see some of these familiar sprites based off from Sonic Advance games. Although this time around though, we can able to see Blaze in the Game Boy Advance sprites. So that's actually pretty swell, despite the fact that Blaze does not exist in Journey forms of in Sonic Advance 1, 2, or 3, because obviously, like I said before, Blaze's first ever debut was actually in Sonic Rush. So obviously though, to make things a little bit more interesting to say the least. So despite the fact that Journey forms of in Sonic 06 did somehow retcon Journey forms of her character development and stuff like that, so, but then again, I'll talk more about that as soon as we're able to finish up everything in Sonic Rush as a result. So, and of course, the game itself is not exactly over yet, because as soon as you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds as Sonic, and on top of that, if you collect all 7 Soul Emeralds, something is about to happen, which you'll see why during at some point at on Friday, potentially speaking though. And let's get to the forms of the actual discussion about the forms of the actual sales numbers on the specific platforms on Pokemon games, specifically the main Pokemon games. I believe currently, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch main Pokemon games, is actually on to 96.32 million copies sold, and whilst compared to the forms of how it does it on Game Boy / Game Boy Color was actually in the forms of being 75.81 million copies, and meanwhile for the sake of the forms of the Nintendo DS was actually on 62.15 million copies for the sake of all these main Pokemon games combined, and meanwhile for the 3DS does have 56.89 million copies sold. And finally for the Game Boy Advance, it's somehow managed able to have like 35.28 million copies sold, which is much lower compared to the forms of how it does it for the DS, 3DS, Game Boy, and Game Boy Color, and of course recently the Nintendo Switch. So that's something worth noting for. And I suppose technically there's also the final thing I want to point out as well. I've recently double checked in Journey Forms of in Toys for Bob website update, and actually as it turns out they might be teasing a new game revealed is about to be coming. So, and as far as I did saw, it was actually something Mask related. Could it be possibly be the next Crash Bandicoot game? Well, we'll never know for sure, because as a result, yeah, that's as far as I can try to say about it. So with that being said, folks, we got the endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic Rush. Is that this is going to be the finale by going into the extras story. So because of that though, yeah, this is going to be a lot more interesting. So I will see you guys until on Friday. Later, fellas.